Hello, my name's Penn, the manager of the Data Empowered Learning team with Teaching and Learning Technology. Oh no, with Penn State IT.
Yes.
We've been reorged. Apologies, just old habits. We are a part of the large Penn State Central IT organization now. So hello everyone and welcome. We are broadcasting live from the basement executive suite, as we like to call it, in the bottom of Old Main. Here with me is my colleague Hannah.
Yes, my name's Hannah Williams. I'm the project manager in the Data Empowered Learning team. So I'm so happy everybody is here. Andy?
Hello, I did want to say my official title is Canvas Overlord. Just kidding. This is what happens when you don't respond quick enough in a Teams message and someone needs to enter what your title is and they will put something in there not knowing where it shows up. So thank you, Hannah, for doing that. That's great. But I'm Andy Fisher, the manager for learner engagement. I have some service management responsibilities here at Penn State and kind of involved in a whole bunch of different little areas, one of which is Canvas and our learning tools integrations and some other areas. So happy to be here and chat with everybody.
Great. All right, so today's presentation is called Widening the Aperture, Analytics for an Ecosystem Beyond the LMS. We're gonna build and talk about this new tool that we've created that is looking at Canvas data at a scale that we haven't done previously. We previously looked at Elevate and Course Insights doing analytics for advisors and instructors. Now we're looking to up the ante and sort of raise the level of analytics that we can get by looking not just at Canvas, but how we understand learning tool usage at a broad scale. So I'm asking you to politely come with us on a journey as we start. We have a Lord of the Rings theme, so let's just roll with it. We're going to start in the Shire here of Penn State University, where us three brave adventurers are going to uncover some treasure. So, but before, let's talk a little bit about the Shire that is Penn State, to understand the scale of the data which surrounds us, to know the sort of how we get to Mount Doom, if you will. So Penn State is a land-grant institution that has 24 campuses and 12 academic colleges, with another 6 to 12 just for good measure. So we have lots of academic units and campuses, but the big thing is what we have bolded in the center of the screen is that we are one Penn State. And what that means academically is regardless of if you're a student at Altoona campus or regardless if you start at World Campus or here at University Park, everyone gets the same degree. It's not branded, you graduated from Penn State Altoona. It's just branded as you graduated from Penn State. College of Engineering, College of Information Sciences, Technologies, whatever the college happens to be, you are graduating from there regardless of any location. Now, how does that flow down to understanding Canvas and understanding what that means for our ecosystem? Well, at Penn State, we have one Canvas system to rule them all. If you know the rest of the quote, you can fill that in your head at home. But yeah, all Penn State campuses and all colleges use the same single Canvas instance. So I want you to think about what that means for your local institution, how that differs from many other different state systems. And so I'm going to toss it over to Andy here, who's going to talk about the sort of implications of having one giant Canvas system to rule them all. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, and this is on the service management side, this is always the first question we get is everything we do, we have to scale. This is just some basic numbers out of our Canvas instance for this past, I think it was 2 years ago, but generally every year is about the same. We've kind of reached saturation in the Canvas side. There are not going to be huge increases in students unless some of our campuses expand or there's large amounts of growth in our World Campus side and so on. But it's generally about a little bit less than 1 million student enrollments. Nearly all of those are active in Canvas. There are some courses that are not. Those are a lot of the maybe independent study, self-paced, other smaller courses that really don't have a traditional faculty instructor relationship. But a lot of the courses, that's where they put their syllabus. It may be something just from a syllabus up to a full online course. 116,000 of those are unique. Yes, that is well beyond what our FTE is because there are some other uses that we have in Canvas as well. But then that also counts students that come and go at the university. So FTE is not a unique student count in a university. We had 131,000 teacher enrollments. That is not just faculty. There are other instructional designers, other staff. So when we look at this, these numbers are all really big. So when we look at this and try to figure out, okay, what are those 19,000 unique faculty teacher enrollments doing in these courses? You need some good categorization of what those courses are. You can't just dive right into it and say, okay, yeah, we use this tool heavily at Penn State. Well, I think with almost 1 million enrollments per year, you're going to use everything pretty heavily. So I think that's determining that is a bigger question. We have a good number of course sections, a lot of page views, and I know new quizzes is one of those things that's near and dear to everyone's heart here that works in Canvas. We had 228,000 quizzes last year. So just the migration of those is a challenging experience, and understanding what that scope and how to support those folks is part of this. Then there's some other things, and this gets into a couple of the later slides we're going to have, that the tools that are in Canvas don't always work well in reporting some of these things, like the 290 learning tools. That unfortunately counts in some redirect tools and some other things, direct learning tool integrations. It's some of the metrics and ways you would look at this stuff don't always work, because you may have to deploy a tool in 2 different nodes within your system, and they might be different configurations, or they may not be. So some of that it comes into play here, and we really have to look at how we manage things for the entire university before we can manage it for a small group. So we try to be flexible in delivering small solutions and big solutions at the same time. So go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, Andy. So Andy really did a great job describing the challenge. So I'm going to skip over most of the slides. It basically comes down to, we have a giant haystack. How do we find the needle? And Andy also summarized that, like, while we have access to current learning tools and some really good efforts, I mean, Unison provides the dashboard here, but the challenge is that a lot of to answer even basic questions that we get asked about, like, what does usage look like at my college or campus? Well, Unison doesn't necessarily have all of that extra context data that is necessary to provide that sort of level of detail. And what Andy described from Instructure, the Canvas dashboard, again, also is not designed to function to answer those insights, or even to work at scale. I mean, those 2 empty boxes on the screen, Andy had started the page, and that was like after 3 minutes, it couldn't even load, because just of the size of the data, it's just not designed to operate at that level of scale and that size of the data, and to provide those insights. So our challenge was, how can we build a tool that could be able to help not only Andy, but academics as well, and provide an aggregate understanding of the usage of not just Canvas, but the ecosystem of learning tools. And so we built this new tool called Aperture. And what we did for those for the engineers in the audience is that we built this using the same technology platform that we use to create Elevate for academic advisors, and Course Insights for instructors. And so what the diagram of that looks like is similar to things I've showed in the past, where we're pulling all this data from Kaltura. From Unison, including Kaltura, Top Hat, and Canvas data. We're melding that with our Lion Path, which is our SIS context data. And then through our analytics, we're spitting out new data that is focused on sort of course level usage and learning tool usage, and that's in our new tool Aperture. And so what I'm going to do now is going to pass it back to Andy, and he's going to explain some context of some of the questions that he's asked, and we're going to show you some screenshots about how we've designed Aperture and how it's been able to help address those needs. You can drive from here, Andy. Go for it.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So some of this, and I'm going to jump back to that slide I had before, and I think this is not something to really miss, but this is part of the extensions of some of the other analytics we built at Penn State before, Course Insights and Elevate. Once you start understanding and building this data, you kind of learn, oh, what else can we do with it? And that's one of those things that you kind of get by experience, that and if this is always happens in analytics, right? What can I do with the data? Just give me the data and I'll figure it out. Well, this is one of the things where some of these other tools kind of led into, well, what's next? And this is where the conversation with Ben and Hannah happened, where, well, we need a lot better reporting and management of some of the things we're delivering to people. And then we also have some ideas later on we're going to share about, well, what's next? What are you else are you going to do with this data and use it from there? So let me get into some of the actual use cases. So some of this is the basic service reporting type of stuff, right? But we have some challenging environments. So I'll talk a little bit about how some of these courses are delivered at Penn State. So our freshman English class will probably have, 20,000 students in here. I know Stuart was in some of these sessions, but if you do run across Stuart Selber is doing some Unison sessions this week. He's our English 15 freshman English coordinator. And some of this is challenging because those courses exist in multiple areas of Canvas. And by areas, I mean the nodes are account structure within Canvas. There's going to be some at our UP campus. There's going to be some at World Campus. There's going to be some in Harrisburg, Abington. Everywhere has these. So to say, okay, I want to look at just English 15 classes. There's not anything that's in Canvas that can do that for us. We would have to drill down to each one of those locations and try to pull out some information and tease it. It's also very hard to kind of figure out what those faculty are and do something with them as a group. So that's looking at academic programs, right? And how those courses span multiple areas. What does usage look like for my campus? So let's say you're managing a campus and you want to have a better understanding of how to support your faculty. What training should I offer? Or what tools are not being used at my campus that might be really valuable? Some of those questions are hard to answer unless you can get down to the data. And the tools that we have right now just did not either show it properly, or we couldn't give access out to those folks without exposing all of the data to them. And then it's kind of just information overload, and then you lose the plot by that point, right? You're spending 20 minutes to explain how to get to the data, and then 30 seconds to actually look at it. That's not going to be a good process for people. So we need something that was a lot better and cleaner on that end. So this goes from admins down to program coordinators, institutional kind of management within campuses and other areas that would use this tool. Next slide. Okay, so this is a screenshot of Aperture, and this is the base level. And I feel, Ben, feel free to jump in here and help direct it. But I want to show you what a little bit of a basic question might look like in using Aperture to answer something. So what we have here is this right now is loaded with all the courses for a certain term. So this is spring 2024. On the left side, it has our campuses, colleges, and so on. Those can all act as filters. In the main area, it's a listing of courses. Okay, so at its base, this is kind of the core part of Aperture, grouping and categorizing courses so you can report on them really quickly. And I will say these pages load as fast as I can click on them. I don't know how Ben did that, but it works really well and clean. Going through the instructor reports, they're nice, but they take minutes to load. Here I can quickly pare down and go through a couple of different areas at once. So I think in this question, I wanted to dig down a little bit and double check. I think I'm looking.
Just go.
I want to make sure. And this is the first time we're doing this presentation. So yeah, this one, this first shot this is on the course core content, right? So these are the different tabs and features that are already built into Canvas, and looking at, okay, well, let's find out some of the courses we have a couple of different instruction modes that are coming out at the university. We have remote synchronous, remote async. There's percentages on remote async as well. So remote async means it's a class that meets online at an undefined time, I believe. It's sort of the traditional online class. Remote synchronous is meeting at a specific time, and there's a whole bunch of different variants on that. So some of that is those courses are structured very differently because some will have to use video a lot, or they might use other tools to have students engaging with each other, like discussion forums. So this is kind of the example of digging down where you go through, and I think in this one we select our campus. So we selected University Park. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I was going to say the idea is that on you first select like a filter on the left. So we're going to click University Park, and then it'll filter down instantly from the 26,000 opens like course sections down to the 15,000 sections. And so the other important thing, so is that we have say 15,000 courses. We're still even working through the idea of, that may seem extreme, but it also is probably the upper bounds, because what happens a lot is that, let's say you have like a chemistry course that has both a lab and recitation and maybe another section as well. So there might actually be 3 sections that count for one course, but some of those courses get cross-listed. So having to even figure out how to count all of this at the course level becomes tricky. So this is actually a roll-up of course section. But again, this shows, okay, we've gone from 26,000 to 15,000 And then if we click again on a college, now we filter this out, and now we're looking at the College of IST and the 221 courses right now being taught at the College of IST, and we can, and by default, we're showing by enrollment. So again, we're combining that data that we're getting from the SIS with the rest of the Canvas data so that we understand where is, what does utilization look like, and to be able to answer just questions at that level. Oh, and I think it's also important too, the other important thing I would say is that at Penn State, one of the other unique things about is that every single course that is created in our SIS system is automatically also created in Canvas, regardless of whether the instructor uses it or not. And so for here, you can see like IST 600, there's a little cancel mark. This is a section that was created, but is not actually published. So a student will log in, they will not see this course in Canvas, even though it is not in the infrastructure there. And so we have to be able to filter out which ones are actually being used versus not used.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And I think the next stage is digging down into that remote async level. So this is selecting that menu, the filter on the left-hand side, and these are just the remote sync courses. So see how we got from 15,000 down to 13, I believe, 12 on the, they're published and unpublished, so 13 courses. And this is a very easy way for if someone is in IST to dig down and say, all right, which are my remote async courses? Let me go talk to them about how they're using Canvas or how they're designing their courses for this method, because there might be some other units there that are interested in doing the same type of thing. So that you can get down and find things much easier. If this had to happen in Canvas, these data elements aren't even in Canvas. We don't have delivery methods, instruction modes in there. We don't have the student enrolled count is always a very challenging one to calculate across cross-listed courses. Is it a unique number? But this one also shows you the capacity of the course as well. So you can get an idea even before courses start that there are some more space within them and credits and duration and everything else that's in there. I don't know, anything else in there, Ben? Want to jump on to the next one? Okay.
Go for it.
All right, next one we want to show you is on the top, there's I guess I have analytic, but there's a Canvas courses, and that's what we're on right now. We're going to click on Learning Tools now, and this will get you to the LTI side of this. So this is some of the background here, right? So this is the traditional, who's using some of these tools, Topek, Kaltura, etc. How often are they using these tools? Are they working? It's to get to those elements. At first, you need to identify what those courses are in the first place. The big one we're going to show in here is we're going to show you some of our homegrown LTIs and how they're used in finding those courses. New quizzes migration is another one, but I think we're digging into the idea of, all right, let's look at one of our homegrown LTIs in this first question. And we can keep on listing all these different cases of helping courses migrate from one learning tool to another. Some of our really low usage tools might only get used in 4 or 5 courses. Finding those in the LMS without this UDP data is impossible because you'd have to dig through all the courses and figure out which one it is. But here with this report, we can quickly track them down with this type of thing. Okay, so at the top level, it really starts the same way. Just shows an LTI filter on there. We did buzz out some of our tools. The only ones showing there are internal tools, but those this is a real report. These are real tools. There's some labels. We're continuing to revise this report a little bit to figure out, are there some ways we can report on this a little bit differently and structure it to understand, well, which are our assessment tools that are used the most? Which are the collaboration tools that are used the most? And start doing some of that as well. I think the LTI tool that shows up on the top there is just a basic count of all of them together, combined. I think the first one we're going to dig into is the Dutton single page LTI. This is a deep linking tool that is delivered by our College of Earth and Mineral Sciences. And it is using Drupal, I believe, as the back end. And they did an LTI interface to get into it. And they use it on a good number of their courses. Well,
I can see, we can see it's 165 courses this semester.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So the usage there, and you look at that is used in only 165. And in the launches are pretty high. So we can get some general usage counts of, oh, should we continue to support the Dutton single page LTI display? Yeah, probably. Or else you have a lot of work in there to replace that in somewhere else. And that's some of the questions we always get of like, well, are we using these things? Well, this can emphatically show, well, yeah, we are, or not, right? So we'll dig in a little bit farther. So this goes into then we selected the the LTI tool, and now it's giving the list of courses, number of launches by each. And we also add in here, there's a student usage bar. And if it's a high faculty percentage, that shows up in yellow. So this one is mostly, the students always will overwhelm faculty unless it's just a faculty tool.
No, this one is actually, we changed that. This is actually just students versus like the total enrollment in the class. So what this is showing you is that almost everyone in these students of like that 1,300 student section, that 400 student section, almost everyone in that course is using it, or 99% almost.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
Yep.
Yeah, and it is a unique user count as well. You can dig through those numbers a little bit. Those are things we could not get in any other way. So it's really important to see, like, even the tools that are paid. So you can imagine if you have a paid tool, you can then look up, see how many students are using it out of your class enrollment. Let's say it's a textbook provider, and you have this really great integration and you're paying for it centrally. You can then look up and see and verify the numbers and say, oh, I have 100 students enrolled. Only 20 of them are using the textbook that we're paying for centrally. Maybe let's rethink that for next semester, or let's reevaluate that in the future. You could then confirm those numbers with vendors. When we started to do some of that with some of our vended tools as well, to confirm the usage that we see is what we're hearing from the vendor as well, and also help you on kind of the contract negotiation side. It's invaluable on that end.
Andy, there's a question. Somebody says some of these seem to have more unique users than enrolled students.
Yes, because students come and go in a course. They may drop the course. These are point in time reports. We've talked about this a little bit, about having trend reports and looking at this over time, but this is a point in time. So there may be, with that first one, 513 unique users. So the student enrollment, but then there's also faculty, there's admins, there's students that may have dropped the class that are no longer enrolled. So that number is a unique count. So we've done some basic verification of those, I think, Ben, to go through.
Yeah, we do. We can actually break all of that down by each of those roles. So if we wanted to see how many of those unique users are students, et cetera. So those are, I think part of what we're doing here is still in that discovery process of, well, what numbers are useful, what breakdowns are useful, and to whom. We're still trying to figure out like how we basically mine the data to get at the right level of insight.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And I think is this the last? Yeah.
Yes.
One more.
One more for you.
All right, so this is looking at the same thing, but with quizzes, new quizzes. So quizzes come through as quizzes 2. So this gives us an idea of which courses are using new quizzes, and we can dig into it and look to it, because we really need to understand better right now where we're at with new quizzes. We've had it in a state of, hey, folks can try it, but we don't recommend you use it for high stakes exams for a little while now. And kind of based on where we're at with testing, we're probably going to keep that state for at least another 6 months. So we keep on, you understand a little bit better where new quizzes is at. And this is the first time we're seeing some good data on what it is.
Yeah.
As you can tell, we don't have a huge number of courses. Out of those 15,000 courses, we have not only a few, maybe 100.
Yeah, and I think this image also is a good showcase of that student usage bar, where you can see here that the ones in blue, those are where like students are actually using it. But there's a couple courses here where they have it enabled, but the unique users only 1 or 2, and maybe only a couple launches, which means they maybe tried it out and just like backed away and like, nope, they just noped out of it for this semester. Or maybe someone like at the bottom where it has like a little bit of usage, maybe they tried it for one optional quiz or something, so only a few students actually experimented with it.
So there's another question here. How do you deal with chatty tools like Proctorio that have many more launches than what students are initiating?
That's a great one, because we have the same thing. And I think we're in a Kaltura session right now, so I can talk about Kaltura. Kaltura is one of those. When you hit a page with the Kaltura content on the LTI, it's just going to auto launch. So what we're trying to do with those is that's where we're trying to get the other caliper data for those, right? So we're looking mainly at launch information right now. The next stage of this is really getting the tool usage through Caliper. So we've been working with Kaltura on getting some of that information to better understand the usage of those chatty tools, because it's not completely clear just by looking at the numbers that, okay, the media launched, but is it being used? Is it being played? That's what those other Caliper events will then show us. So this is the first level. It's a very superficial look at just launches. And in that space, it's better than what we had. But of course, I say, Ben, I want to do the next thing. I want to do the next thing. So
yes. Yep. So that's good. Nice Godspeed. Thank you. I appreciate it. So the other side, are you good, Andy? Can I?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, great. So the other side of the house that I'd like to talk about today before passing it over to Hannah to talk about where we're going in next steps is some of our initial explorations and how we can make this useful for, the academy, for the institution. So looking at Penn State holistically from that perspective, where we have 24 campuses, 12 colleges, majors and minors, we're looking at questions related to more things that would be more useful for a program administrator, department heads. We've talked to a bunch of faculty members who are doing curriculum design processes and are maybe doing things like, well, I really want to look across syllabus and look across, and so what data can you give me across syllabuses, across my major or across, my program? With Canvas, sometimes you can use the full rich HTML. Other times you can just embed like a file and say, here you go, kids, go download the PDF and read my syllabus. And so for the ones that are included, so we can only break that down, but then for the ones that actually have the embedded content, we can start to say, well, what's the length, or what keywords are in there or not. And so we started to do some basic exploration. In the sense here, this is a look, for example, what someone might see if they were a faculty in charge of the psych department, of wanting to know, okay, well, of this 168 courses, we can start to do a breakdown of how many are using our Canvas or have linked or have embedded? What's the average length of syllabus? How many are including, and of the links that are included, how many links are they links to Penn State emails? Are they links to external websites? Are they links to files that have been attached? Big sort of scale questions. And not only we're starting to experiment with just understanding the data, but then can we also visualize it at the same time? So here's an experimental chart where we're looking at that same data and showing, well, across the psych department, you can see, well, there's a lot of them that have very small syllabus, and yet there's a couple of them that have a varying longer length, depending on just looking at the understanding.
So Dave Long has a quick question. Do all faculty at Penn State put their syllabus in the same place or same tool in Canvas? This is from the syllabus tool in Canvas.
Right, and so one of the things that this is as useful as people follow these standard practices, of which not everyone has to do. And so for the degree to which this length is useful, this is looking at a subset of only those that actually have embedded their Canvas. So this is looking at likely 139 of those 168 courses and then doing the analysis from within there.
Yeah, and I think because we are sort of in that one Penn State model where we have the one Canvas instance to rule them all, Canvas is sort of the hub of the land of enchantment for, all things courseware. So the dominant version, the dominant number of courses probably do have their syllabus in Canvas. But we may, as Ben mentioned earlier, we have the situation where some courses have labs, some courses have recitations. Only one of them needs to have the syllabus. So there's a little bit of variance in the numbers that we still have to suss through.
And this is one of the reasons we started here, is because we talked with a couple departments, and there are literally manual processes going on at Penn State where they ask each of the faculty to send them a copy of their syllabus. Like every year they say, please send us a copy, and because we like the instructional design units or whoever the powers that be want to be able to analyze them. And so we're trying to figure out, how can we help automate that process? How can we help distribute that knowledge for different units and academic programs?
Can you click read more really quick?
Sure.
Okay, keep going.
Just moving on, we can come back to this. Another use case that's really interesting that we're looking at is because we're also looking at, we have access into Canvas data thanks to the UDP. We're looking at the assignment structure. So we're looking at what data can we look at across courses and a curriculum to understand how the assignments are set up. So starting to understand, how many quizzes are being offered, how many discussions, how many assignments are currently active or upcoming, how many of those are project or group work or exams. And so we put some custom logic into place. And right now, I'm just going to show you, this is just not fancy. This is just a basic sort of spreadsheet style look. And this is, again, that intro English 15 course, but this already begins to show diversity of course, looking across. So like the first column is total assignments. So this is how many assignments are, and I don't even have this sorted. So it's like from the top, we see there's one section with 21 assignments, another one with 77, another one with just 8 assignments. And you can see then how many are completed of active. You can see how many also, another interesting column there is no points. So there's a bunch of assignments that are just not worth points. So of those 73 assignments in English 15, section 54, 57 are not worth a point. So those are, it's a different setup of the structure. And I think importantly, when we look at this data, we're not trying to imply any sort of judgment about what is the right or wrong way. I think we're just trying to provide a insight to be able to look across, to be able to, for faculty and programs and cohorts that want to be able to have that discussion about, well, how do you set up your course? How do you set up your course in a way that's most engaging for your students, that's most effective for your learning outcomes? I think those are this data allows you to have that discussion in other ways that is only sort of anecdotal, because a syllabus doesn't always necessarily match what is actually being done in the course. So this is another way of being able to match up, and that's also often why people are looking at syllabuses. They're trying to get a general understanding of what are faculty actually teaching. This is another way of saying, hey, here's a real-time view in what faculty have set up their courses, and starting to understand the different ways of how faculty are using different sort of assignment structures in order to teach their courses.
And I think it's important to note here, because this is not true at all institutions, but here at Penn State, faculty control the curriculum. So there's a lot of academic freedom to enable them to deliver their courses in different ways. But from a program chair perspective, they often have very little knowledge of what this differentiation looks like. And so if they get to the point that they want to engage in evaluation of the program, being able to see how these differences may impact outcomes, there may be gold nuggets of wisdom in there that they can draw out.
And this is a great segue to you, Hannah.
Okay.
Take her home.
Can you flip
Yes.
to the next slide? So I think the important thing to note here is that the current state at Penn State is that when we are talking with academic leadership, program chairs, deans, department heads, chancellors, anything of those sort of flavors, they've historically been relying on large-scale post-hoc institutional research endeavors. And we have a unit at Penn State that has supplied some of this stuff, but they're looking at, they get access to data about what's happening in their colleges it's not granular, right? So it's just knowing what list of courses have high DFW rates, for example. So it makes it really hard for them to engage in pinpoint drills for decision making. From the business perspective, as Andy pointed out, we've for the longest time have been relying on vendor provided data dashboards that kind of show broad user activity and don't integrate really well with the reality of just how we function as a unit. So we've been getting aggregate tool usage, but even understanding what constitutes a user is interesting. There's a question here.
The question is, what are some examples of outcomes of these data insights? Do they lead to conversation with deans and targeted Canvas trainings for specific departments? Any student outcomes that have changed?
Okay, hold that thought. So the current state's not good enough. Let's go to the next slide. We're only partway through this journey, Joan. Okay, we're still headed on a path. Next slide. As you are probably all deeply aware, the financial realities in higher education are not inconsequential. We have gone through a number of budget cuts, and within IT, there's become a reality where we need to be more strategic about how we think about delivering tools and how we understand the tool usage and the value. This is important for not only optimizing future purchases. For example, we can tell you right now, we've got 16 or 17 different micro-credentialing systems at Penn State. There should be one, right? How we justify contracts, this is the value proposition. So for business leaderships, how do we understand the state of tool usage across our enterprise to make more strategic purchases, but also how can we establish equilibrium with this idea of how do you define a user for a tool so that both the vendors that we collaborate with and us are on the same page with this stuff. Next slide. From an institutional perspective, there are other long-standing pressures that exist. Closing equity gaps is an important one, but data is necessary to be able to make that possible. So being able to get past these high-level post hoc reports into this like deep delving of data that we've been talking about today is really important. So how can we better understand the impacts of how different course structures impact student performance? Is the course in English 15 that has 77 assignments maybe providing better outcomes for students than the one with 8? I don't know. And how do things like, I'm picking on something unfairly because we were just talking about it with the English 15 example, but how do heterogeneous course structures impact underrepresented minority students? What can we learn about how we're delivering our curriculum in these tools that can enable people to make better choices? So back to Jovin's question, next slide. This is really a staged approach for us, okay? And there's two veins here, one for business leadership needs and another for academic leadership needs. But we will transition from utilization, where we right now are sitting with this tool, into something a little more dynamic where we get to strategic insight. So from a business perspective, being able to understand how we're allocating resources, even things like training across the institution, right? Do we need more training for, Canvas new quizzes, et cetera? How we engage with our vendors, do our contracts. From an academic leadership needs in the strategic insight vein, being able to do academic program management. The views that you see right now are still very much in a space where we are trying to understand the data, the shortcomings of the stuff that we are dealing with, and we will build more complex views that exactly do what learning analytics should do, get people to a point of specific decision making, which gets to enabling change leadership. How do we take what we know and transition it into a value proposition where we understand the money that we are spending and how it impacts our instruction and our students? And that's true for both the business side and the academic side. Next slide, Ben. But we have some problems, okay? Penn State's never had this kind of data before. We have substantial data governance, policy. We constantly are like revisiting FERPA here. It's like becoming like a FERPA expert every day. Access and provisioning. I mean, at the level that we can provide data to people down to the program chair who's responsible only for 3 courses in stat or whatever. How do we make sure that when that person gets a new job, that the provisioning of this is transitioning over to the right person, right? Which gets back to policy and data governance. There are tons of performance surveillance concerns in here from a faculty and staff perspective, but also from a student perspective. We know from our other tools that people are sensitive to this stuff. So we are very cautious about how we unveil and sort of roll out these tools. We keep them very close to the chest for a very long time. Training and education needs are also super important. And that training and education also gets into ethics, helping people recognize their own implicit biases with working with this data, which sadly is magnified by the fact that we have tons of systemic bias in higher education in general that have been sort of disabling and holding people back and that are students for a very long time. So there's a lot to unpack here. The good news is, though,
Oh no. There's the good news. There's no good news.
The good news is there's the 3 of us. No, okay. So the good news is that there's like a real place. This is such exciting work to be working on right now and talking about right now, because we are at a point where we can really start to see how data is going to be impacting how the institution works with makes its decisions, works with its partners, its peers, and sort of optimizes how it does things. I personally look forward to coming back here in a year and giving another presentation that we can answer more of Jovin's questions to be able to say, yeah, here's what happened. Here was the good, bad, and the ugly. And I would like to think it ends up being mostly good.
Thank you.
None shall
That's
pass.
funny, Mark. And I think, Becky,
Go
I
ahead.
think Hannah went through and kind of answered your question about how do we handle the kind of the cultural issues with faculty and sharing the information and knowing what's happening in their courses. That's why we're treading very carefully in this space. I think there aren't many tools out there that we've seen that do it, especially down to this level, and are in this space. I think there's a lot on student performance. This is more on systems performance and how this stuff is working and where does it fit in kind of the rest of the model for the university. We've been just data starved, particularly on the service side. We've been relying on vendors to give us information about the things we're using, and that is never good when it comes time to negotiate, just from my experience.
Yeah. So Becky asked, culturally, do you run into issues with faculty who find out you were looking at this kind of information about their courses, and how do you navigate that? So yes. The longer answer is that we've had some experience with this because we have two other tools. And we deal with this in a couple of different ways. One is that we aggregate a lot of the information. Aperture is going to be a little bit different because it's going to break things down in a different way. And we will, when we go to produce those final views that are living in that strategic insight space, I think a lot of care is going to go into making sure that we are creating a situation that good decisions can be made. Because again, as I noted, since there is systemic bias in courses, for example, just how enrollment works at the university. The students who enrolled first are the students that are in your honors college, have the most credits, they are the most acclimated to higher education learning environments. The students who enroll last have the fewest number of credits, they're on academic probation. So if we start sort of cross-tabbing this kind of data with delivery and course outcomes, man, if a department head is looking at this, we do not want faculty promotion and tenure processes being decided based on data because it's being used out of context. I mean, really, that's kind of what this gets down to, is how do we contextualize the data in a way that it can be used to make good choices and isn't threatening for people. I don't have an exact answer to your question because it's a tough thing to deal with, but we have confronted it and we've been easing forward slowly. So Chris has another question. Do you want to read it?
Do you have or plan to have controls in place so that you can't get to a really identifiable level of detail, exclude small classes, etc.? So one of the things architecturally, you can speak to the technology behind it, is that we have engineered this such that when we are ready to dole out access, which we are still in the planning stages for, we've engineered it such that if we decide that we want to give access to the program chair in IST for only the data science manager, we can make, or the data science program, we can make sure that only that person has only access to C courses in the data science program. And we can limit their view to only those parts. I think there is a larger, broader question about faculty and student rights, about whether the things are opt-in or opt-out, who has access to the data. Those are where we start to build relationships with our, here we have a Department of Undergraduate Education with our faculty senate. Those are things that take long time to figure out. So that's why we are starting with a grassroots with just a few users and maybe a department to help sort of flesh out some of these cultural issues so that we can sort of pilot that and then report back to the larger organizational structures about how it went and be able to get feedback.
Chris, additionally, the thing that, your question sort of harks on some of our other tools, and I'm not sure how we are still going to learn how it applies to Aperture, but the nature of your question is sort of getting at privacy concerns. And the thing that's really interesting is that when you start looking at this tool usage or course structure, you can have 6 students in a class, 2 of them can be underrepresented minorities. And while that may constitute something that's identifiable, it's still really significant. So kind of to add on to what Ben is saying, we spend an enormous amount of time with the university registrar, who is our overseer of FERPA for the institution, as well as our privacy office and our security office. And they help us move through the brave new world that is learning analytics, to which our institution does not have governance, policy, all that other good stuff that is, up to date with where we are in terms of our our technology and capabilities, because we do want to make sure that we are sensitive to keeping things private, yet at the same time, from a course structure standpoint, there's a lot of really important data that can be gleaned even in small courses.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, you cannot drill down and find students in the system. You can find groups of students and usage, but it's not going to show enrollments anywhere.
Right.
The other tools we have that you guys have too.
Yes.
We'll drill down to that, but right now we don't.
Yeah, and while we showed faculty names here, this is something where we checked beforehand with the registrar, with the FERPAS officer. He said all of these courses and those instructors are all publicly listed anyway. In terms of, you can go look up who's the instructor for IST whatever or STAT whatever. That's publicly listed on the website. So that is, that's in their sense, that's fair game. But how this gets moved is anyway.
Yeah.
And Dave, for data governance, hopefully this doesn't wake the bell wrong. I think it's still sleeping a little bit, but there's kind of a point where there will be a tipping moment, and we are sort of curious when that happens. And we literally are, live from the basement of where the university president's office is right now, but we've been working really carefully with the people in the floors above us to make sure that, they're able to catch cannonballs and help understand the value of what these tools can do to support their needs. And it gets back to closing equity gaps, financial realities, other stuff where they largely recognize that they need this data to help engage in change leadership.
Yeah, I did want to jump back. Chris, you had an earlier question about what do we classify as a course in this system? And this is one of the things that Ben and Hannah and I talked about very early on, that what we consider a course in Canvas is not what our SIS considers a course, and there's sections, there's all different things. The courses that we have in this system are courses that are in the LMS. So they may be cross-listed, multi-section, and so on. So this is really reporting on that side of it and not the academic structure side so much. We've also had the same kind of conversations around the academic structure not matching the Canvas structure, and how our data is represented, and trying to figure some of those things out, because some of our campuses are colleges and some of our colleges are campuses, but not all of them. And some of those campuses are underneath another college. So, it gets very complicated in that structure, and we kind of punted a little bit on that and just made it easier to dig around through the pieces of data and get to the areas you need to.
Yeah, there's a whole nother area of this tool that we didn't show, and that was for we call them manually created courses. So there's a whole nother level of analysis that we've started to do, where we're digging into all of the master template courses that instructional designers use, or the new student, new faculty, new advisor orientation courses that are in there, or Penn State Outreach has a whole bunch of other courses where people are coming in. So it's so trying to understand that broad scale usage is yet a whole nother avenue that we haven't even touched on, and those are the non-official the non-official courses, or even just, they're not even courses, they're just sort of sandboxes.
I know we're well over time, and we still actually have people in here listening to us, which is a great conversation. But I didn't want to respect it. It is after 5 on the East Coast, yes. So I know folks who have other things going on. Were there any other outstanding questions that we can also bring people up to the stage if you want to ask manually, or just throw it in chat real quick? If not, we can close out.
Go to the next slide, just in case anybody wants it.
There's the next slide, yes.
Yeah.
Final slide. Look, there's our email.
There's our email address. So feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. We're happy to talk to anybody. They have shared felt pain, whatever. And your axe. Thank you, Dave. Well, thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.
Thanks.